regions in spiritual world, life in heaven and consequences of sin. What we do in the spirit world. What different places exist there? Who lives in heaven and where the sinful people go? Find the answers of these questions given directly from the spirit world in heavenly messages. What are the consequences of sin? Being a fallen person means being the result of 6,000 years of fallen human history, a mixture of good and evil. People inherit good and evil characters from their ancestors, but living in the world where there is more evil than good, evil is continuously repeated. When we say that there are many evil spirits in the bodies of people on the earth, it is the result of personal sins and ancestral sins passed down through the lineage. Spiritual message. If you want to ascend to heaven, first you have to go through the door between the middle level of the spiritual world and paradise. As you enter you see fog, such as you see when you climb a mountain just before you reach the summit. Looking down you see the fog beneath you, and as you descend the fog again gets thicker and thicker. But as you continue upward and approach the kingdom of heaven it gets brighter. In the kingdom of heaven you will see green grass everywhere. Birds are singing, flowers are blooming in profusion, and animals are playing happily together. The air is fresh and filled with fragrances like lilac. Bright light shines throughout, more beautiful than diamond and clear as crystal. As you stand there you feel so comfortable and refreshed. The feeling of love and happiness fills you. Unlike in earthly life, in the kingdom of heaven these happy feelings are continual. In the kingdom of heaven there is no anxiety or suffering. All the spirits have bright and peaceful expressions, they don't need to talk as they automatically care for each other. There is no fighting, no jealousy, no hate or arrogance, and no fallen nature. Everyone is filled only with true love. However, only people who were blessed through the true parents can enter this place. Even people on earth who led a good life cannot enter the kingdom of heaven unless they have been blessed. You cannot go to this place by living in a haphazard way. In order to enter the kingdom of heaven you have to live a clean and beautiful life, crystal clear with no blemishes. In order to live here you must have a smile on your face and a light that shines like jewels. Blessed couples should examine themselves every hour of their lives to check whether they are truly becoming citizens of kingdom of heaven, by leading an earthly life of which they will not be ashamed in any way. Message from the spirit world. Other regions of the spirit world. As you descend from the kingdom of heaven, you will encounter many different regions of the spiritual world. Many people on earth think that there are only two different places, heaven and hell. But in reality there are many regions, from very evil places to very good places. Although there are many different levels, any level other than the kingdom of heaven is not at all comfortable because the people fight each other, insisting that they alone are correct about their opinions. Each region is filled with people who are of the same type, so it is not interesting to remain there. For example, in the region where people who were accustomed to stealing things on earth dwell, they are ever thinking that other people will steal things from them. Amid such distrust of others, fighting goes on continually. When they come here most of the spirits are placed in various regions of hell and the middle realms. Where they are placed is decided by how they live their lives on the earth. Therefore, if you don't want to suffer in hell you must not live an unprincipled life, but go the way of absolute faith, absolute love and absolute obedience. God is only goodness and love. Unless we make effort to resemble God, we cannot enter the kingdom of heaven. If you descend further into the lower regions, you come to regions of hell where you cannot breathe. It is dark and scary, and it has a terrible smell, worse than the smell of rotten meat or fish. Deformed figures appear in front of you, biting each other, yelling and screaming at each other. Some regions are filled with burning holes, and in them are people who are forever angry at each other. The worst regions are reserved for those who were sexually corrupt or who committed suicide. It is difficult to look at the many ugly figures there slithering all about like snakes. People living on the earth don't recognize how frightening it is in these areas. If you could see it, you would not be able to remain there even for a minute. Fortunately, all blessed couples have had their original sin forgiven and have the chance to cleanse their ancestors' sins, collective sins, personal sins and fallen nature. Yet blessed couples don't recognize how precious and valuable is the grace that they possess. As the divine principle teaches us, no one forces people to go to a particular region of the spiritual world, but people find their own place by their own will according to the spiritual level they attained on the earth. If only we could make people understand this, they would know how to live in the future. Message from the spirit world. The more sins, darker the place. The kingdom of heaven is extremely bright and white, clean like flawless white jade. But as we descend, the colors become darker and dirtier. Descending from the kingdom of heaven, the color turns beige, then darker shades of purple. Descending to still lower regions, the color becomes light brown, then gray, dark gray, black and pitch black. The more sins committed, the darker the color. Also, spirits who committed many sins with a certain part of their body show dirtier and darker colors on that part. After receiving the blessing, people can get rid of their fallen nature and live in the kingdom of heaven. The more true love, the closer they can get to the kingdom of heaven. But the more fallen nature, the darker their spirit self becomes, and they go to a dark place. It is so important after we receive the blessing to remove evil, resentful spirits and to remove our fallen nature, because this will decide our environment after we go to the spiritual world. People may enjoy their wealth, power and good position, but the situation in the spiritual world is so different. The more money the person had unearthed or the higher the position that they misused, the greater their troubles are in the spiritual world. In the divine principle that reads, sin is a violation of heavenly law which is committed when a person forms a common base with Satan, thus setting the condition for give and take action with him. Most people think of sin only as personal sin, but there is original sin, ancestral sin, collective sin as well as personal sin. We are burdened with sins inherited from our ancestors even though we personally did not commit them, and we are also responsible for collective sins that were committed collectively. Diseases have spiritual causes. All modern diseases have spiritual causes that are connected to the sins of ancestors. By looking at the sicknesses and difficulties of descendants, we can infer about the life of their ancestors. If the ancestors had stolen things from the others or misused public things or money, their descendants often suffer from stomach problems. If they had many sexual transgressions, their descendants may suffer from diseases of the sex organs, or be unable to bear children, have problems being faithful, or get divorced after marriage. Ancestors who did not see things about others correctly and hurt them will cause their descendants to have children who are born blind, mute or deaf. In other words, according to the way he was given, the descendants suffer with the same kind of troubles. The heavier the ancestors' sins, the more difficult it is to heal the resulting sickness. It may not even be curable. If people on the earth do not clear up these sins through paying the required indemnity, the suffering is passed down to their children. Later, when those people come to the spiritual world and watch their children suffer, they regret that they did not clear things up for them. They lament, "If only I had borne my suffering on earth, my children would not need to suffer now." Countless of evil spirits infest our bodies. Therefore, unless people clear up all the sins passed down from their ancestors, as well as the personal sins they committed themselves, they cannot escape from sickness and pain. The sins are so great and so many that they cause countless evil spirits to infest the bodies of people on the earth. There are multitudes of them, each the size of an ant's egg. In reality, spirits can control their size freely. These evil spirits make themselves tiny in order to infest people's bodies in large numbers. When you look at a spirit, it may appear as it was as a human being, or as it was at the time of death. Sometimes the spirit appears as an animal or as an insect according to how he or she lived on the earth. The person who had a hot temper might have the appearance of a tiger. The person who delighted in tricking others might look like a fox. and a person who was sexually promiscuous might look like a snake. The Kingdom of Heaven was not open till 2012. My training center is located right next to the Kingdom of Heaven. The Kingdom of Heaven is not yet open, as it will be opened only after true parents arrive here. All of us will enter on that day. I am glad that we have this training center, because we need it in order to restore all people in the spirit world. I can't never thank you enough for providing it. Now we are able to create absolute good spirits. This means we have now created a realm where Satan cannot invade. As the number of absolute good spirits increases, the territory of God and true parents increases. Satan's evil work is diminished, and the hope of establishing the Kingdom of Heaven opens up on the earth. Some may question whether it would be easier if we would restore all the evil spirits on the earth at once. But that is not the principal way. God cannot intervene in the choices of fallen human beings, who fell into the midway position. God cannot intervene with his power, and Satan cannot intervene either. Each person alone decides whose side he or she is on by the conditions he or she makes and who is in the rightful position to intervene. Only when a person makes a condition for God, can God intervene in that person's life. Therefore, in order to remove evil spirits we need to make indemnity conditions by understanding our sins and the sins of our ancestors. Otherwise the separation or liberation of evil spirits is very difficult. The same principle applies in blessing our ancestors. We need to make conditions so that our ancestors can be liberated and sent to the training center in the spiritual world, where they become the absolute good spirits who will be the foundation for God to come down on earth. As of this time, true parents have achieved a cosmic level of victory. They have liberated the spiritual world and have broken down the boundaries between religions in the spiritual world. On this basis, evil spirits are being restored to become absolute good spirits. This work would be impossible unless the Messiah, the eternal true parent, does it. Message from the spirit world.